All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to dive right into a huge story playing out in Canadian policy. A major pivot in its world-famous immigration system that's really going to kick into high gear in 2026. You know, for years, Canada has been known for having its arms wide open. But with all these changes, you've got this one big question that's on pretty much everyone's mind. Is that whole era over?
Okay, so let's get right into it. The short answer? No. The doors aren't exactly slamming shut. But, and this is a big but, what we're really seeing is a massive pivot in policy. The government is shifting gears, moving away from just rapid growth and toward what it's calling a more sustainable, more controlled immigration system.
So you gotta ask, right? What's behind all this? Why the sudden change of heart? Well, it really boils down to one thing. A massive, and I mean massive, surge in the number of temporary residents coming into the country. Just to give you a sense of the scale here, by January 2024, the number of international students alone had ballooned to over 1 million people. That's a huge number, way more than the system was ever built to handle at once. And this wasn't just some abstract number, it had real-world consequences. This quote from an RBC report really hits the nail on the head. This kind of explosive growth put a huge strain on everything, from finding a place to live, to getting healthcare, to even just squeezing onto the bus. So, faced with all that pressure, the government has set a very clear, very specific new goal. Get the number of temporary residents down to below 5% of Canada's total population by the end of 2027.
Okay, so that's the goal. But how exactly are they planning to pull this off? Well, it all comes down to the numbers in their new immigration levels plan.
The strategy is actually pretty straightforward when you break it down. It has two main parts. First, you pump the brakes hard on the number of new temporary residents coming in. And second, you keep the door for permanent residents, the folks coming here to stay and build lives, steady and open. And here you can see that first part in black and white. The government has put hard caps on new temporary workers and students, and you can see those numbers are set to decrease each year. They're trying to get things back down from those crazy highs we saw in 2024.
Now, for the other side of that coin, permanent residents, the target here is going to stabilize at 380,000 a year. And look at this breakdown. Almost 2/3 of those spots are for the economic category. That's a huge signal that the focus is squarely on bringing in skilled workers to fill jobs.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture numbers, but what does this actually feel like for someone trying to come to Canada? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and break down the 5 key policy changes that are really shaping this new reality for 2026. Yeah, these 5 changes are really where the rubber meets the road. They're going to affect pretty much everyone, from grad students and tech entrepreneurs to skilled workers who just trying to move between provinces. First up, a big one for students. There's this newish document called a Provincial Attestation Letter, or PAL for short. Basically, it was brought in to make sure each province doesn't go over its limit for new international students.
But, and this is a game changer for some, here's the new twist. The government wants to keep attracting the best and brightest. So, if you're a master's or PhD student at a public university, you are now exempt. You don't need a PAL. This basically takes you out of the numbers game and makes it way easier to study in Canada.
All right, now let's run through the other big shifts. For all you entrepreneurs out there, the super popular startup visa program, it's on pause for now while they rework it. Over in Ontario, a couple of big moves are happening. Professionals from other provinces can get their credentials recognized way faster. And, this is huge, employers can no longer demand Canadian work experience. That has been a massive barrier for so many talented newcomers. And finally, out in Alberta, they're tightening the rules for their rural immigration program to make sure it's actually helping the small communities it was designed for. You see, each of these is a really specific tweak to the system. Now, you hear the government talk about this, and they call it a necessary recalibration, a responsible move. But not everyone is convinced. In fact, some experts are sounding the alarm, warning that this could be a really risky gamble for the economy. And that really gets us to the heart of the debate, doesn't it? Is hitting the brakes this hard the right move for Canada's long-term health, or could it actually create more problems than it solves? Remember that RBC report we looked at earlier? Well, they don't mince words. They call this an overcorrection. Their big worry is that this clampdown is already squeezing businesses and universities that really depend on that flow of people from around the world. The report lays out 4 huge risks. First, Canada's reputation. If our policies keep changing so fast, we could start to look unpredictable, and top talent might just decide to go somewhere more stable. Second, those labor shortages aren't going away. With Canada's population getting older, we need more workers, not fewer. Third, we're not the only game in town. The competition for global talent is fierce, and while we're putting up hurdles, other countries are rolling out the red carpet. And finally, there's the risk of losing the people who do make it here. It's already a problem that about 1 in 5 immigrants leave. Making things harder isn't going to help that.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? What should you remember? It really all comes down to this. Canada is walking a very, very tight rope right now.
On one side of that rope, you have this very real, very urgent need to manage growth so that things like housing and healthcare don't just collapse under the strain. But on the other side, you have an equally urgent need to bring in the world's best and brightest to fuel our economy. And right now, those two needs are pulling in opposite directions.
So the new rules for 2026 are locked in. It's a clear choice to put control and sustainability first. But the billion-dollar question is still hanging in the air. In this hyper-competitive world, can Canada really find a balance that lets it be both sustainable and competitive? The answer to that is going to define what this country looks like for a long, long time.